He's been called the internet's favorite daddy, Hollywood's golden boy, and the face of every major franchise you can think of. But lately, something's changed. The praise is starting to feel quieter, and in its place, whispers, questions, memes, a slow but steady wave of discomfort surrounding Pedro Pascal, especially when it comes to how he interacts with the women around him. Is it overexposure, a misreading of innocent moments, or are people finally saying out loud what others have been quietly thinking for a while? Today, we're taking a closer look at the growing conversation around Pedro Pascal, what fans are saying, why others are pushing back, and how the line between charisma and cringe is getting harder to define. Because whether you love him, question him, or haven't made up your mind yet, one thing's clear: the internet is starting to talk. Not long ago, Pedro Pascal was just another talented actor working under the radar. Then came Game of Thrones, and everything changed. As Oberyn Martell, the charming, sharp-tongued prince with a thirst for justice and revenge, he stole the spotlight in just a few episodes. That performance didn't just earn him fans, it turned him into a cultural moment. From there, his rise was nothing short of explosive. He became the helmet-wearing lead in The Mandalorian, the emotionally scarred protector in The Last of Us, and the go-to actor for roles that required both grit and warmth. Suddenly, Pedro Pascal was more than an actor. He was a symbol of diversity, of vulnerability, of internet thirst. The memes exploded, the interviews went viral, and the world couldn't get enough. At first, the enthusiasm made sense. Here was someone different, charismatic but unpolished, famous but still awkward in the best way. He didn't feel like a typical leading man, and that's exactly why people loved him. But over time, the charm started to wear thin. Not because he did anything wrong, but because it started to feel like he was everywhere. Every project, every press tour, every fan cam. It's not uncommon for Hollywood to overuse its darlings, but in Pedro's case, the saturation hasn't just sparked fatigue. It's opened the door to something more complicated. Because now, people aren't just tired of seeing him, they're starting to question what they're seeing when they do. From the beginning, Pedro Pascal's appeal wasn't just about talent, it was about personality. He wasn't a typical Hollywood alpha. He was goofy, self-deprecating, emotional. Fans called him Internet Daddy and meant it as a compliment. He leaned into it too, smiling through awkward interviews, joking about his age, and embracing the weirdly affectionate online obsession with him. He seemed like the perfect mix of masculine and soft. But lately, the very things that made him so lovable are raising eyebrows. Videos that once felt playful are now being rewatched with a more critical eye. Compliments that once came off as charming now feel maybe a little forced. The way he hugs, holds, and touches co-stars, once dismissed as friendly and sweet, is being viewed through a different lens by some viewers. And slowly, the nice guy label is starting to feel less like a badge and more like a mask. To be clear, none of this is happening in a vacuum. Social media thrives on recontextualizing public figures, especially ones who get a lot of praise. And when someone is being celebrated nonstop, it often sparks a wave of quiet skepticism. In Pedro's case, that skepticism is growing. Not necessarily because people want to hate him, but because they're starting to question the disconnect between how the media presents him and how his behavior sometimes comes across. Still, there are plenty of people who say this is all just nitpicking, that if Pedro Pascal weren't famous or weren't constantly praised, no one would care. But for others, that's exactly the point. It started with a few harmless clips. Pedro Pascal hugging his co-stars, placing a hand on their shoulder, holding their hands during interviews. At first glance, nothing unusual. After all, actors get close on set, especially during high-pressure projects. But as more moments surfaced, especially with female co-stars, some viewers began to feel uneasy. One of the biggest sparks came from videos of Pascal interacting with actress Vanessa Kirby during press events for their upcoming film. In multiple clips, he's seen placing his hands on her hips, standing closely behind her, or leaning in with what some called overly familiar body language. The internet didn't hold back. Some called it inappropriate, especially considering Kirby is currently engaged and pregnant. Others said it was just friendly affection between coworkers, and that reading too much into it was unfair. Then came the viral footage of Pedro at a red carpet premiere with Sarah Paulson, a longtime friend. In the clip, he holds her closely while posing for photographers. Some viewers pointed out that Paulson looked uncomfortable. Others argued that this is just her neutral facial expression, and that people are projecting discomfort where there is none. But the most debated moment might be a resurfaced video of Pascal placing his hand on Willem Dafoe's wife's chin during a Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony. Dafoe's expression, caught mid-reaction, set off a flurry of interpretations. Some swore he looked visibly annoyed, others insisted it was overblown. In isolation, none of these clips are scandalous. But taken together, they've sparked a larger conversation about physical boundaries, especially between male celebrities and the women around them. The question isn't just, is this behavior inappropriate? But also, would anyone else get away with it? Still, not everyone agrees that there's even an issue here. Plenty of fans argue that Pascal is simply affectionate and open, something rare in Hollywood and maybe even refreshing. But the growing discomfort from others suggests this is a topic that isn't going away anytime soon. As the discourse around Pedro Pascal grows, so does the divide between those raising concerns and those rushing to his defense. For every critical comment or eyebrow-raising reaction, there's a wave of support arguing that this backlash is not only exaggerated but possibly unfair. Some of Pascal's defenders point to the nature of fame in the digital age. Once someone reaches a certain level of popularity, it's only a matter of time before people start looking for flaws. They argue that the criticism isn't really about his behavior, it's about overexposure. People are simply tired of seeing him everywhere and are channeling that fatigue into moral outrage. Others say this is just another case of internet overanalysis, where normal human interactions are twisted into controversy with no context. On the flip side, critics insist this isn't about tearing someone down for being popular, it's about noticing patterns and questioning how certain behaviors are framed. Would a lesser-known actor be celebrated for constantly touching his co-stars on red carpets? Would a woman in the same position be praised for repeatedly grabbing and holding on to men? There's a sense that the rules are being bent for Pascal, and that's what's making some people uncomfortable. There's also a gender dynamic here that can't be ignored. Many of the people raising concerns are women who say this kind of touchy-feely behavior would not fly in most real-world workplaces, no matter how nice the person is. Some have even pointed out that discomfort doesn't have to look dramatic. Sometimes women smile through things they don't want to deal with, especially in public or professional spaces. The real tension lies in how we talk about public figures who have long been considered safe or sweet. Is it possible to question their behavior without launching a full-blown cancellation? Is it okay to feel weird about something even if it wasn't meant to be harmful? These are the gray areas that the internet isn't always great at handling. And that's why this debate feels different, because it's not just about Pedro Pascal, it's about how we read body language, interpret intentions, and navigate power dynamics, all in the glare of celebrity culture. One thing Pedro Pascal hasn't been shy about is his struggle with anxiety. In multiple interviews, he's opened up about feeling overwhelmed in high-pressure situations, especially red carpets, public events, and press tours. According to him, reaching out to others, literally and emotionally, is part of how he stays grounded. He's described his co-stars as his support system, saying that holding hands or staying physically close helps remind him he's not alone. In a recent Men's Health article, this idea was highlighted again, that connection calms him down, and being physically present with friends is how he copes. It's a vulnerable admission, and for many fans, it adds depth to his personality. They see his behavior not as inappropriate, but as an honest reflection of someone managing anxiety in the best way he knows how. But this is where the conversation gets complicated, because while his explanation may be genuine and even relatable, it doesn't necessarily erase the discomfort others feel when they see him repeatedly initiating touch with women, especially in highly public professional settings. Critics argue that anxiety, while real, can't be a free pass for crossing physical boundaries. After all, lots of people manage stress without leaning into constant contact. To be fair, Pascal has never claimed that his actions are part of an official coping strategy. He hasn't directly connected the more controversial moments, like the hip holds or chin touches, to his anxiety. That connection has mostly been made by fans and defenders trying to explain or justify what others find off-putting. So the question becomes, is this explanation helping, or is it doing more harm than good? There's also the issue of consent and comfort. Even if the intentions are innocent, how much do the feelings of the person being touched matter? And when it's happening on camera, does that pressure people to smile and go along with it even if they'd rather not? It's a tricky balance. On one hand, we want to allow public figures to be human, to show vulnerability without being attacked. On the other, visibility brings responsibility, and when someone's behavior consistently makes some viewers uneasy, it's fair to ask where the line should be drawn. even if it was never meant to be crossed. As questions about Pedro Pascal's behavior grow louder, another question has started to surface. Why isn't anyone in Hollywood saying anything? While social media is quick to dissect every moment, the industry itself remains silent, or worse, seemingly protective. And that's raised concerns about how fame, power, and image management continue to shield certain stars from criticism. It's not a new pattern. When a celebrity becomes a brand, a symbol, or a cash machine, studios and PR teams often move mountains to maintain that image. And Pedro Pascal, right now, is a brand. He's the face of major franchises, a favorite for magazine covers, and a fixture in pop culture. There's a lot of money riding on his likability, so when criticisms arise, they're often brushed aside or reframed as overreactions. Some creators have even claimed their content criticizing Pedro Pascal has been quietly suppressed. One YouTuber noted that a previous video discussing him was demonetized despite not violating any community guidelines. It had been manually reviewed yet still flagged, raising suspicions about whether some stars are simply off limits when it comes to honest conversation. Whether that's algorithmic fluke or a reflection of industry favoritism is hard to prove, but it fits into a larger pattern. Celebrities who are closely tied to powerful studios, franchises, or streaming platforms often benefit from a layer of silent protection. Criticism doesn't disappear, it just doesn't get traction. And while no one is saying Pedro Pascal is immune to scrutiny forever, the current climate suggests that Hollywood still plays a major role in shaping what fans are allowed or encouraged to see. When the media constantly portrays someone as lovable, harmless, or even perfect, it makes it harder for the public to raise concerns without being labeled as haters or contrarians. This isn't necessarily about covering up wrongdoing. Sometimes it's just about control, curating a narrative so tightly that even valid criticism feels like a personal attack. But in the age of social media, that control is slipping, and the public is starting to question not just Pedro Pascal himself, but the system that has elevated him so quickly and seems so reluctant to acknowledge the backlash. As this conversation unfolds, one question keeps rising to the surface, quietly at first, but now more openly. Would Pedro Pascal's behavior be tolerated if he weren't famous? It's not an attack. It's a reflection of something many women recognize from real life. In most workplaces, consistent physical contact, especially in public or professional settings, would raise serious questions. And if someone continued to touch others despite visible discomfort, it likely wouldn't be brushed off as charming or affectionate. But in Pedro Pascal's case, many of those moments are softened by his image. Because he's perceived as warm, quirky, and non-threatening, behaviors that might earn someone else a reprimand are instead seen as part of his appeal. Then there's the added layer of the so-called gay best friend dynamic. Some people defend his actions by suggesting that Pascal, if he is gay, poses no threat in these interactions, but that assumption is loaded with problems. First, Pascal has never publicly identified his sexuality, and speculating about it doesn't justify crossing boundaries. Second, gender dynamics don't disappear just because someone seems safe. Women can still feel uncomfortable regardless of the context, and that discomfort is valid. There's also the social pressure many women feel in moments like these, especially on red carpets or during interviews. Smiling, laughing, and going along with something doesn't always mean they're okay with it. Sometimes it's just easier than making a scene. And when the cameras are flashing and the world is watching, calling out unwanted behavior, even subtly, can come with real risks to reputation and opportunity. This isn't to say Pedro Pascal is predatory or malicious. That's not the argument. The conversation is more nuanced. It's about how fame, charm, and public perception influence what we're willing to accept and what we're willing to excuse. Because when behavior is only seen as problematic if it comes from the wrong person, that says more about us than it does about them. So, where does that leave us? Is Pedro Pascal just an affectionate, anxious actor navigating fame in his own way? Or is the growing discomfort around his behavior a sign that something deeper is being ignored? The truth may lie somewhere in between, and for many viewers, that uncertainty is exactly what makes this so uncomfortable. On one hand, it's clear that Pascal has built a public image rooted in kindness, vulnerability, and emotional availability. That's rare in Hollywood, and it's a big part of why fans were drawn to him in the first place. But as more footage surfaces and more people start to speak up, that image is starting to feel a little too polished, a little too protected. None of this means there's a scandal coming, or that there even needs to be one. But When enough people start to feel uneasy, even without a smoking gun, it often signals that the public's trust in someone's persona is starting to crack. And in a culture where celebrity narratives are carefully curated, those cracks tend to spread fast. What makes this conversation different is that it isn't about canceling someone, it's about asking why certain behaviors are excused for some and criticized in others. It's about rethinking what we consider harmless and who gets the benefit of the doubt when things feel off. And it's about listening, especially when women say something doesn't sit right. Whether this all fades in a few weeks or becomes a turning point in how we view Pedro Pascal, one thing is certain. Once that switch flips in the public's mind, it's hard to flip it back. So, what do you think? Is the backlash against Pedro Pascal fair? Is it a sign of deeper concerns or just another internet cycle spinning out of control? Has the industry created another untouchable figure? Or are fans simply reading too much into moments meant to be innocent? Either way, the conversation has started, and it's not going away anytime soon.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to Stars and Hypes so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how things will continue. Drop them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take care and have a great day.